And there was a big message that Obama was using this for political purposes, which further made it important to be, if we were going to get any photos of our own, which you could question the value of that, but if we could get the opportunity to be in with Obama, we weren't going to see him in public, generally speaking, because he took a really low profile. I think his staff was aware that there was criticism about him taking advantage of this from a political point of view, and so he made it a very private thing, which I think was a good call. But still, you want pictures of the president in that situation. And so Andy was embedded, and then I was working the streets. And that was, you had the whole stripes. It was the circus was in full play there, and there were people all over the spectrum on that. And they were packing guns and flags and racist banners, and then there was a whole entourage of people who were on the other side and putting on big displays. And so there was plenty of things to take a photograph of, I could say. But even as I was doing it, I knew that I was probably going to end up being a secondary photo to whatever Andy got out of the president. And so in some ways that gave me a lot of freedom, to be honest with you. I just felt like I just sort of treated it like a photographer's Disneyland in terms of all these interesting possibilities out there for photos, and tried not to be mindful of if something went totally haywire here, which it was in the back of my mind possible. At one point, there was this one guy that dressed up in motorcycle Harley Davidson stuff. If you were just going to judge a book by its cover, you would think the guy was like another gun supporter or whatever. And so we were having witty banter, and he said, if you want my opinion, he said, showing up at an event like this, packing your gun, would be the same as if a friend of yours got killed by a drunk driver and you showed up at the funeral with a 6-pack of beer. And I just was thinking, that is exactly right. The guy was dead on, and it came from a source that I wasn't prepared to hear it from. And he said, and I'm a guy that, he said, I've got guns, and if you come to my house, you're going to get the dragon, was what he said. The guy was a soundbite, he was a quote machine. And so, I get that, perspective, and it's, it's a defensible one, I think. Regardless of what you think about gun control long term. But then there were some other people, that had some, racist posters and stuff, and you just go, where do these people come from? And it's like, I'm really torn on one hand, giving them a forum, and on the other hand, showing people unblinkingly that there's a big section of humanity that thinks like this. That's the circus part of this when a big event like that happens, you've got people, it draws out the more extreme on both sides of the situation. And so the more reasonable people get drowned out by the voices of the people on either side. And media, it's really a difficult thing. It's that old joke about, we don't run headlines that say, 1,000 airplanes landed safely today, because that's, not news, quote unquote. And so, you've got people packing guns on the sidewalk. That's the photo, not just some person that's just standing there going, I'm just here to support the president, And so I recognize that I'm guilty of gravitating toward the extreme people in that regard. And I think they were there to make a statement, no question about it. They were not there to support the community of Roseburg, quote unquote.